Hello and welcome to the Peanut Butter Quarterly Slush Pile. We're so glad that you've chosen to tune in to listen to us today. What we're about to do is discuss some poetry, and we basically run a regular editorial meeting, meeting that we sit around, discuss the work, and have a democratic vote at the end. So you will bear witness to that. We thought it was time that we explain again to my brother David and anybody else who might need to know how this process works. So when you submit to Painted Bride Quarterly, you submit via Submittable. And when we're reading submissions, we occasionally think about one and say, that would make good fodder for the show. And then we ask the author's secondary permission. So if you would like to be on the podcast, submit through the regular portal, and maybe you will, right? The submissions come just the same way. What we love about our show, if we can say that we love something about ourselves, is that very rarely, most of the time, only one of us has seen the work, usually two, but never has there been a discussion. So what you're hearing is a fresh editorial meeting. All of that said, the catalyst for doing this show in the first place was to share with you how closely we look at every single piece that comes to Painted Bride Quarterly. We inherited a democratic editorial process, and we're darn proud of it. So there is no layers of editors and one person at the end who says yay or nay. We all read everything, and to get in the magazine, there must be a consensus from the entire group. What that means, the only thing that's bad news here, is what that means is it takes us a while to get back to you. So right now we're looking at a 7 or 8 month turnaround. Now is July of 2023. I'm not exactly sure when this will be released, but I'm sure we'll hang right in about that space, right? So once you send to us, please know that it'll take a minute, but it's because we're reading you with such great care. And we're about to illustrate that for you right now. I keep saying we. And you know what I'm going to do, because Jason's been with us the longest next to Marion and I'm going to go across the pond.
I am
Jason,
in England.
tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm in England. I'm in Nottingham. It is lovely. The campus here is so beautiful. Oh my God. Like, it is this giant sylvan campus full of ponds and art galleries and pathways and gardens and clock towers. It is a really, really beautiful campus. I'm so happy to be at the University of Nottingham. So yes, if you've been following the saga of my endlessly postponed Fulbright, it is in fact happening. It is in fact underway, and here I am. And I'm coming to you from my office in Trent Building, just across from the tram. And I will pass it to Dagne.
So happy for you, Jason. So glad you're there.
Yeah. Oh, it's super. It's great to know Jason. Yeah, I'm in my usual place up in Canada, just outside of the capital of Ottawa. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm the person in the bunch who's very much at home this summer. I'm getting one kid ready to go off to college again in the fall, and we're just enjoying local sights and sounds, including bumblebees, which come up later in this
interesting
in this episode. Yeah, we know several people who keep bees and make honey, so I was intrigued to see this poem. So I will bounce it to Samantha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha, and I am coming from Washington, D.C., in Georgetown, which, if you haven't been, is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the U.S. and, is charming and a little scary to walk around in terms of all the bricks, so you might fall, but otherwise very lush. And I'm going to shoot it to our sound engineer, Anthony.
Hello, my name is Anthony. I'm currently at home now in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be grounded here. Just went outside. Seems pretty darn nice, so I'll take that. And as per usual, let's get the show on the road.
All right, all right. Well, on today's episode, we're going to discuss two poems from Barbara Diehl. Do you think Diehl is Diehl? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have two poems from Barbara Diehl, and we're thankful that she's allowing us to discuss them today. Maybe Jason, it has been a while since you've been here. Would you mind reading?
No.
Thank you.
December, good night. It's sunfall, and the paper sky is grayed with erasures of best laid plans. All the day mistakes forgiven. The broken pencil points of planes thumb smudged away, their grumble chatter hushed. The blackening windows shuttered. So sleep in the night sea, in the sky listen. So dream a planet dance, breathe a metronome. So keep time to a tick-tock moon, to evening's pocket watch, its face a dozing chaperone, so hum fade, so eyes closed, nothing to shudder fret, all safe.
Oh, lovely read, Jason.
Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. So slushies, while the crew is thinking, and you are too, allow me to remind you that you can go to pbqmag.org and look at this poem. It's done in couplets, but I think what's even more important is you should know Jason did an amazing job reading, but the poet Barbara Diehl has made up a lot of words, made a lot of compound words. Paper sky, best laid, sunfall, day mistakes. You got to see it to believe it. Take a look at how it's structured here. So
I mean, I was sort of impressed that when I got to TikTok, I didn't think of TikTok, the app. I just sort of like was there with the watch, with the evening's pocket watch. And it's interesting how there are these words like pocket watch, or even something like best laid, where we would write it out as two words, but we expect it as kind of a clutch of language. And so all of these, compound, sunfall, paper sky, broken pencil, like a thumb smudged, they work so well. They were so smooth. I felt absolutely no friction as these words were being combined into units.
Well, and I was thinking of them as sticky words. It's like they've been attracted to each other. And, they make you read and experience the poem differently. So day mistakes, I experienced so differently from if it had been written the day's mistakes. It made me think right away, and what's a day mistake as opposed to say a night mistake? It made my brain go to places it would probably have not gone if it had been written more conventionally.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, Dagne. And I think that it makes me like re-see the words, right? Like, because the words themselves aren't that unusual, but they feel like less familiar in this form.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet, did anybody have this feeling they were so organic? Like, to speak with Jason, to what Jason said, they're not. There's no artifice, right? They're that grumble chatter. Why is that not a word?
Right?
Can we do that? Can we just start using grumble chatter?
It's so true. It's like, can't we
I-
bring back great Shakespearean words that don't get used anymore? I love slubberdigullion.
I love it. I can hear the grumble chatter. It's
Yeah,
a word that
totally.
we need. We don't have a word that is grumble chatter. We need it. That's what I was admiring through the whole thing is thinking these, even though they are what everybody said, like looking at these old words a new way, words we used to sing together, I kept thinking they should exist.
Yeah,
So perfect.
Absolutely. And although the piece brings to mind some of like E. Cummings' own
Sure.
wordplay with smushing words together, it also feels very, very unique, its own voice.
And I like the to move away from the words for just a second, the transition to the second paragraph, second set of stanzas. The first one, I'm going to describe this place to you. And then the second one, I'm going to tell you what we should do about it. right? So sleep in the night sea, dream a planet dance, right? The beginning, those lines beginning with so. How do we respond to this environment of illustrated for you? Like this.
Yeah.
I love how, yeah, I
That's
love the
true,
second suite.
Kathy. Yeah, that's true. That's really lovely.
I was really interested in the way that, like, I mean, a lot of, people will always talk about the difference between Anglo-Saxon and Latin addiction, and that the Anglo-Saxon is monosyllabic, that it tends to be very visceral, that it tends to be, very immediate, that the Latin, it tends to be multisyllabic, it tends to be very intellectual. But like something like chaperone felt really different to me because of something like Planet Dance or Paper Sky. There's something that often happens with a kind of 3-syllable word like grumble chatter that gets built up out of these 2 Anglo-Saxon words, sky listen, that then when you get to these other words like metronome or even pocket watch, they have a new quality to them. There's like something really fascinating about how this kind of reinvigorates words that are familiar by what it's doing with the words that are being compounded.
Well, zippity doodah. Does anybody have anything to complain about?
I don't. I mean,
Okay.
forgiven, hushed, and shuddered. I was like, maybe this shouldn't be on their own lines. Like maybe they need a little more length in those lines. But I think it works wonderfully, and it's setting up all safe at the end, which is so gorgeous. And I mean, we're not talking at all about like this is about putting away the day in order to rest at night. Kind of like retreating into something restful, which is so hard.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of captured really beautifully here.
Shudder fret is the other one I feel the most strongly about as a word that we should already use.
Yeah.
Help me, please bring these words into circulation.
And it's so applicable today. This poem feels very needed right now.
I wonder if that's because, I mean, I think it feels for me like a little bit like timeless, not that it's nostalgic, but it feels like, it's speaking of something that is not, happening for, like how many people go to bed now, maybe like near kind of the blue light of the phone or the computer. So I feel like, I feel that kind of absence of kind of the angry kind of grumble of the world in it. And it's nice. It's a nice kind of absence.
Good point.
Blushies, I kind of feel I can confidently say if you go have a peek at this on the page, you'll be as smitten as we are. And I hate to do it. We do have another poem by her, but we did blitz through that, and I think we are ready to vote. And I think there's no dramatic tension.
And we apologize for that.
I know. I'm like, what can I do to create dramatic tension? What can I? How can we? Make this worth the price of admission.
Okay,
right.
Shall we vote?
We should vote.
1, 2, 3, vote. And it's unanimous. Jason tried to keep his thumb parallel for a little longer.
I tried to like really delay it. I tried to really delay
there.
it. But,
we knew yeah. We all knew which way it was gonna go, didn't we?
I am never mysterious.
So yeah. So we're moving on to bees being bees. Dagne, did you say you'd like to read this for us? Because I'd be happy.
Very happy to read this. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful.
Bees being bees. Oh, let us celebrate the bees, the fat bumblers, the drunk stumbling, window smacking honey heralds, be winged and bedazzling gold sashed. The blustering pomposity of the lot of them, their bellies full of spring, bees brimming with busy beeness. Oh, lift a glass of catmint, a dinner plate of dahlias, a salad bowl of aster, yarrow. Lift them to the sun and call them sacraments. Watch the bees waltz with Joe Pye weed and black-eyed Susan. See them swoon to the music of the wind and the hyssop. These are no wallflowers, not these bees, bees that bore holes in your Adirondack chairs, bees that stare at your cold, sweet tea, bees that lick your lemon sherbet bowl, bees that sniff the scent you spritzed on neck and wrist. They take their sweetness where they can. Do you? Beware the bees, the electricity in their vicinity, the buzzing and the slices of your sweet buzzed peach, the venom hidden beneath the wink of wings. Oh, but some of us would like to be a bee and have a stinger too. Oh, free the honeybees from their wood-framed hives, from the poking, prodding, pushing fingers of their keepers. Free them from those children with their faces pressed against the glass in summer camp. Let them be hive in the wild, why don't we? And let us bumble too, be furred and fat, and be queen bees of our beeswax castles. Let's buzz and sip, and when we're drunk as dahlias in midsummer's breeze, we'll loll in honeycomb, pleased as punch that we're not drones. Why don't we? That was so much fun to read. Thanks, Barbara.
It came through in your voice.
Yeah, we could hear the joy. So Slushy, so you know, on this one, it's couplets again, but super long lines. Very, very long lines. It fills your screen left to right. So now you'll hear the sound of thinking.
I do love the fullness of language in this piece. As I say, it was extremely enjoyable to read, and they're just these wonderful combinations of words where you get sort of a sense of repetition and a roundness of vowels and places, and just really kind of delightful to let spill off the tongue.
It was a kind of journey from the bees being bees to the bees being people. It was kind of a journey, or not bees being people, but people being bees.
People being bees,
like,
yeah.
As we get deeper into the poem, the more we become the bees, the more the speaker is sort of inviting us to join in the beeness.
Which is more than just appreciating them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like how all my different senses are activated in this poem. I like so many of the line beginnings and the line breaks. I really love that third stanza with the cold sweet tea and the lemon sherbet bowl. And it's nice, you know, to there's a nursery rhyme or something quality to this. And I think it was a little bit to do with kind of the melodious voice that you have, Dagne, when you read. But it really did feel like you know, like just something I would pick up from a storybook or something, in like a really nice way.
Well, I agree with that, Samantha. I mean, every time I went back to read this piece again, because I knew we were doing this and wanted to know it and prepare a bit for me, I just found myself thinking of children's poetry, but it also made me think, like, I know the place of children's poetry, but what's the demarcation line between when a poem should be for children, if as it were, as opposed to a poem that maybe has aspects to it that make you know what I'm saying? Like, is there any reason why adults can't enjoy this poem too, right? And obviously, I mean, we sound like adults who are enjoying this poem, but is there a demarcation between poetry and children's poetry, you know, or is it all just poetry? I suppose I'm the newbie in the group, so I tend to ask questions like this, but I'm interested in what you guys think.
Well, it's really dark. I mean, I think that, like, as it gets towards the end, like particularly the like pleased as punch that we're not drones, and
yes,
some of us would like to have a stinger too, and sniffing the scent spritzed on neck and it's like I definitely felt like a much darker undercurrent.
It's definitely not quite as sweet as it first appears. I would agree.
But I think that's true of a lot of children's stories though too, right? Like
well, yeah. Most fairy tales started in extremely dark territory. Yeah.
Frank
Yeah.
Baum actually wrote The Wizard of Oz because he wanted to write less scary stories.
That was to be
About
less
the
scary.
twins.
Oh, okay.
I know. I mean, like now we're like The Wizard of Oz is terrifying, but at the time it was like these grim
You can
fairy
be
tales are just too
kicked out of
gruesome.
your
Like,
world
you
and
know, we're gonna
plunged
do
into
something a
another
little
one,
like
right?
nicer.
Wow, gosh.
I thought that I did see the darkness as well, but I thought that just had to do with when we came to be humans, you know?
Yeah.
And it just felt like the progression of the poem. So
That we would bring our
so
own dark side into it, Kathy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'll start with something negative. I don't like
Yeah.
the rhetorical why don't we's. I don't like either
Mm.
one of them. I feel like the Barbara Diehl is already pushing things, right? To get us to I don't know. There's a line when charm becomes saccharine, right? Or I guess that's what I'm saying. And the why don't we really starts edging over that line for me. So does anybody else feel that way?
I mean, I know what you
And the do
mean.
you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I would take them all away. The do
Right,
you.
right.
I mean, it
Yeah.
reminds me a little bit of like Mary Oliver, in that way, like kind of this, yeah, it has the dark undercurrents, but there's such a strong sense of optimism too, that kind of optimism can also be a little pushing sometimes.
I felt like the poem was kind of withholding something. I actually had this sense that there was something else at stake that I wanted to get, that a lot of those questions and a lot of the pulling in and a lot of the gestures, the smelling, particularly the things that are bodily, particularly the things that have to do with eating and smelling and being in proximity to other humans. I was sort of like, is there something else you want to say? Like I sort of felt like the poem was sort of keeping me at a slight distance, and the conceit of wanting to join the bees in their beeness was actually a way of like not saying something that I was really interested in. It seemed really sensual and dark and maybe a little violent.
Yeah, well,
bit.
I felt like that stanza that starts with beware the bees and has the venom hidden beneath the wink of wings and so on was the chance to lean into whatever that is, whatever you think's being withheld, Jason, or going darker with this piece, but then it's not realized. It kind of circles back around to just this notion of freeing them and let them be hive in the wild, which is fun word play as opposed to behave in the wild, which is what I hear. But yeah, I guess I love this piece. I love the wordplay. I love its exuberance. I love the contrast, but I feel like then it didn't go where I guess I was hoping it would go.
Well, for me, I think I have that sense of withholding too, and I was sort of interrogating myself about it. I'm teaching an eco poetry class right now at Hopkins, and I think that I'm very immersed right now in the question of what is kind of this category and things like that. And for me personally, I think it's very hard to think about bees without thinking about the environment and what do we mean by wild. And so I think similar to the last one, but in a very different way, I do feel like there's some kind of nostalgic energy here. And again, I don't know if that is because of my own headspace, but it's very difficult for me to even see bees like out walking around DC and not think of them as kind of precious and just a very happy kind of feeling to even see that they're existing.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to see them and not thinking where are the rest of them because
right.
they've noticeably declined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I try not to read into this poem, what the poem, what I'm thinking of and not what the poem is saying. But for a poem that has a message of how like we should behave right now, it's set then in kind of a present for me that is asking questions that this poem doesn't seem to be engaging with.
I think that sounds like that's exactly it. appreciate putting it that way. Yeah.
I also couldn't quite, I mean, you were asking sort of about children's poetry earlier. And I mean, I guess one of the things that I associate with children's poetry is metrical writing and rhyme. And I couldn't quite find the line here. Like the line sort of keeps breaking on like in the first stanza, we break twice on the, and then Venus kind of gets its own line. And like, I couldn't quite find, like in the first poem, I had such a strong sense of how it was structured. And in this poem, I had a much harder time kind of finding the structure, the regularity of the stanzas. And you should definitely go look at it, Slushies. It is blocked out in a very clear way, but then the lines themselves often felt a little arbitrary to me.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And it often ends on words like as, in, the. They're not words that really propel you or set up any tension.
I do think the poem at the same time is so like bountiful in a way, like just looking at it and experiencing it being read, like it's just so lush, like the song like Life or something. Like it really, really has this attractive quality to it, kind of even in despite the small criticisms that I said.
Right. When you brought up Mary Oliver, like sort of she would famously crawl through the woods so that she would, like, if she's writing about a fox, she wants to know what the fox sees.
Yeah.
So she would actually like crawl through the woods to get that perspective. And I did have a very strong sense of intimacy with the bees here, that even as the bees are kind of slipping in and out of human, I did have a really strong sense of intimacy with the bees. Should we vote, or do people want to be persuaded on like one thing or another? Is there something where you're like, I don't know, I need to talk more about this part?
No, I'm just thinking Leonard Cohen, you want it darker. And I think it's sounding like we all do.
But not for the sake of darkness, but because it's pointing towards somewhere that we want to keep journeying toward.
Yeah, so we were giving notes, we would say that. And I mean, would anybody agree with me too, that it might be, I love that Samantha just said the word bountiful, but is it just too many puns and connections and metaphors? And, is it just too much too? Maybe it's too much because it didn't go where we wanted it to go.
For me, Kathy, that's exactly it. It's just, I suppose the first piece, I mean, they're hard to compare, right? Because stylistically, they're extremely different. But the first piece had that lovely balance between a sense of safety and what's at risk, I suppose, is how I would put it. And I feel like this piece just would be more satisfying if what's being celebrated was being contrasted against what's at risk. So yes, that's it for me. Yeah.
Okay, then it sounds like we are pretty much ready to vote.
I'll say one, because I think like a lot of people do live like bees, actually. Maybe there's a lot of people I know, and there's just like there's the dark underside to that too, right? So
what do you mean by living like a bee?
But the whole last stanza, right? By kind of stumbling around drunk,
ignoring what's going on.
Kind of. And I think, you can go to, any brewery or winery or whatnot on a weekend and experience that. But it's interesting to watch those bees and like think about, oh, what are they hiding from? What is their worry? At least that's what I do.
And how do they experience it? Because you can't see it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they're kind of glistening. Everyone looks good,
Oh, I think that's very on point, Sam. Yeah.
It's great.
So we're going to vote?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay.
1, 2, 3, vote. Well, thank you, Barbara, but that one's not going to go in. So we're so grateful that you allowed us to have this conversation, and we hope that you find it useful for you and enlightening in some way, hopefully. So we're going with December Goodnight. And
that's such a great poem.
Oh yeah.
Such a great poem. honored to publish it. So slushies, do take a look at both of them and let us know what you think and how we're doing and all those good things. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say? All right, thank you and keep on reading. Woohoo!
Thank you.